tonight.
I can't imagine anyone voting against the establishment of a commission on the greatest assault since the Civil War on the Capitol.
The first filibuster in the Biden administration, praying congressional unity in the wake of the January insurrection.
There's no excuse for a Republican not to vote for this unless they don't want to hear the truth.
The White House releases a proposal for next year's spending.
Our annual budget is still at the same enacted level as 2010.
But who's footing the $6 trillion price tag? And ahead of the Memorial Day weekend, a journey through the battlefield.
That's almost certainly blood that ended up on the Bible.
Sacred artifacts that inspired America's finest in times of war. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A polarized Washington finds consensus on China. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
Good evening. I'm John Jessup. It is rare today, but a bill targeting China produced bipartisanship on Capitol Hill.
The legislation addresses the origins of the coronavirus pandemic and would allow victims' families to sue the Chinese government. Senior Washington correspondent Tara Merchner has the details.
The Made in America Emergency Preparedness Act would establish a 9/11-style bipartisan commission to investigate how the pandemic started. The Never Again International Outbreak Prevention Act would allow legal action against China and other countries who've intentionally misled the public about the outbreak. Along with investigating the origin of the virus, a panel would also look into the response by the U.S. government and the private sector to determine precautionary steps for the future. Among them, recommendations on protective equipment and other supplies necessary to address a national emergency and require they be made in the USA. President Biden said this week the U.S. intelligence community believes the virus was either started by human contact with an infected wild animal or during a lab accident in Wuhan, China. Meanwhile, China says it will not support an investigation into its origins. In turn, the Biden administration accelerating the declassification of U.S. intelligence on COVID-19.
And we will continue to press China to participate in a full, transparent, evidence-based international investigation with the needed access to get to the bottom of a virus that's taken more than 3 million lives across the globe.
Supporters of these measures also insist other international groups like the World Health Organization must be held accountable for their inaction on the pandemic and insist Congress needs to act now. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Thank you, Tara. Well, tonight the president is kicking off the Memorial Day weekend by urging more Americans to get vaccinated.
Speaking to a crowd in Virginia, a state that's lifting COVID restrictions just in time for the holiday, Mr. Biden touted the country's recent strides. CBN White House correspondent Eric Phillips joins us now from the White House North Lawn. Eric.
John, Jenna, the president spoke to the crowd, including a lot of school children, about the strides being made in the war on COVID-19. He chose a climbing facility in Northern Virginia as the place to make his comments today. He told the crowd they're able to enjoy this upcoming weekend more because of an ongoing effort from Americans who are getting vaccinated. Today, Virginia lifted most of its restrictions, including social distancing and capacity rules. Biden says that must continue.
More than 165 million Americans so far have done their patriotic duty, 165 million, and gotten at least one shot. Americans of every party, every race, creed, have come together, rolled up their sleeves literally, and done their part. Now, 51% of American adults have been fully vaccinated. We aren't just saving lives, we're getting our lives back. Stores and restaurants up and down Main Street are hanging open signs on their front doors.
Just this week, the group Faith for Vaccines held a virtual summit to strategize ways to include and encourage Americans to get vaccinated. It was the largest interfaith summit of its kind to date, and White House officials were a part of it.
I think your coalition is really a symbol of the best of America. Your work is not only helping the country to heal physically, it's also helping to restore the soul of our nation.
Because at a moment where people are casting about and wondering who they can rely on for accurate information, they look, yes, to their doctors and nurses, but they look in particular to people they know, to people they trust. And in so many cases, that is all of you.
Houses of worship across the country have opened their doors to serve as vaccination sites, and hundreds of thousands of doses have been administered at those locations. John and Jenna.
Eric, we saw a few familiar faces in that clip. What more can you tell us about the Faith for Vaccines Summit? Where did the idea come from, and why were there so many young people involved?
Yeah, there were dozens of people on that particular call a couple of days ago, and they really were there to talk about how to include people of faith in this effort to get more folks vaccinated. Young people were a part because of the fact that some of the restrictions have been lifted in terms of who can get the vaccinations. At least 2 of the vaccines now are available to those who are 12 and over. And so the question becomes, how do you encourage children to get this vaccine in the ongoing effort to get all Americans vaccinated? And the best person or the best people to ask that is other children. And so they were involved talking about how they speak to their peers about it, how they address fears and any other uncomfortable aspects of getting the vaccine. They had a lot of good input and ways to encourage young people who are in their preteens even to go ahead and roll up their sleeves and get those shots.
Yeah, Eric, I'm curious, how did the group make a connection between getting vaccinated and practicing their faith?
You know, no matter what faith you belong to, whether you're Christian or Hindu or Muslim, whatever it may be, the tenets of just about every faith has to do with serving your fellow man and making sure that the person next to you is okay. And so the strong, persuasive argument being made by this group is by getting vaccinated, you're not merely caring for yourself, but you're caring for your fellow man. You're loving your fellow man. And that works towards scripture, such as loving your neighbor as yourself and making sure that you're your brother's keeper. All of those things that are tenets of faith, no matter what walk of life you may come from.
Yeah. All right, Eric Phillips at the White House for us. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Well, President Biden is set to unveil a budget that would raise federal spending to $6 trillion.
That is right, Jenna. It's his first fiscal White House plan and would boost spending on infrastructure, education, health care, and social services. But that would push total spending to more than $8 trillion by 2031, taking federal spending to levels not seen since World War II. The plan is only a proposal and would have to get through both the House and the Senate.
CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody joins us now. David, let's start right there. Democrats hold a narrow majority in both the House and the Senate. Do you see them getting this new bill, this new budget, passed?
Well, it's going to be tough. I mean, let's remember what a budget is, right? It starts out as a budget proposal, and that's really what it is. So it's kind of, if you think about it, a pie in the sky request, and $6 trillion is a big pie and a big sky for sure. So then the question becomes, can Democrats do much about this? And look, it's going to be problematic because part of the problem isn't so much the spending, but how do you pay for it? So inside this budget is everything from tax increases, from a corporate tax increase to certain other fees and taxes and all that stuff bandied about. So that's where the rubber is going to meet the road, and that's where Republicans are going to be able to pretty much stay firm on this and not get a lot of this passed into law. So I think we're definitely not looking at the final version for sure.
David, today the Senate GOP blocked a bill to investigate the deadly January 6th assault on the Capitol. Only a handful of Republicans voted along with Democrats. David, your thoughts on how things shook out today, and is this the end of that conversation?
It's the end. That was it today. I mean, if you can't get to 60 votes to debate it, number one, it's over with. I mean, if you can't even get to debate a bill, you're not going to be able to vote on the bill, number one. But if you can't even get the votes to debate on it, you certainly don't have the votes for the actual bill to pass. So it's over. We can just kind of move on with that commission issue at this point. I call it an issue because that's what it's become. It's kind of become a political football. And it's really become political more than anything. You know, the Republicans say all along, like, this is just a relitigation of January 6th, that there really is going to be no fact-finding here. This is just another way to kind of rub it in Republicans' faces, rub it in Donald Trump's face, and they're not going to have any part of this. Having said that, 6 Republicans We know at least 6 Republicans. I think there were more, actually, but we know Romney and Ben Sass and Rob Portman and Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Bill Cassidy voted in favor of this. So there were clearly some Republicans that wanted to see it, but it's over with.
Mm-hmm. No. Well, David, speaking of investigations, China and the origins of the coronavirus, this appears to be one point of agreement for both sides of the aisle, a common enemy almost. David, do you think this bipartisanship we're seeing here could lead to more bipartisanship in other areas?
No. I'm sorry. Am I giving you guys a lot of bad news? I don't mean it. I'm just being honest. You want the honest analysis. No, it's not going to lead to bipartisanship in other areas. It doesn't typically work that way anyhow, as you guys know. Maybe there was a glimmer of hope for a moment to say, hey, look, an actual vote on China that just required a voice vote. They didn't even require, it was fully bipartisan. But look, at this point on the China issue, you specifically have to come together on that one because you need to get to the bottom line in terms of the origin of the coronavirus. Everybody wants that. And so it was a no-brainer for that to be bipartisan. Everything else is more of a brainer rather than a no-brainer.
Wishful thinking.
Wishful
I don't know.
Thinking indeed. All right, CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody, thank you so much for your time and insights. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, David.
You too, guys.
And coming up, lawmakers push to hold China accountable on a number of issues. But is it enough? Travis Weber is on deck.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern Gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel. Now available at cbnradio.com.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. Boosting America's competitiveness against Chinese technology. That's the goal of a bipartisan bill the Senate advanced today.
Lawmakers voted 68-30 on the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act. The bill would set aside more than $250 billion in new funding for strengthening U.S. technology and research, grants, and equipment. It also aims to counter Beijing's growing global influence.
And joining us now, Travis Weber, Vice President for Policy and Government Affairs and Director of the Center for Religious Liberty. Travis, welcome. It's good to have you on with us this evening. Let's talk about China's economic rise and what appears to be Congress pushing back. How effective do you think this measure advanced by the Senate is?
Well, obviously, we'll have to wait and see as it takes effect. But unfortunately, I don't think this bill sends the right signal out of the gates. I don't think it's going to be effective based on what I'm looking at this point. We do need to tackle the China issue on a number of fronts, first on human rights and religious freedom issues. But I don't think this bill really gets us there. And the Biden administration and Congress have a lot more to do if we're going to effectively deal with the reality of what's going on with China's political model of repression and religious freedom violations and the larger U.S.-China dynamic on the world stage.
Travis, speaking of China on the world stage, China announced that it will not cooperate with the WHO investigation into the potential Wuhan lab leaks. Some experts say we may never know the origins of the coronavirus because of the Chinese government's stonewalling. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I hope we do get to the bottom of it. I think this is crucial as a matter of U.S. national security, but frankly, the world has a right to know. And, you know, this is an issue that every reasonable person should be able to agree on and say, we just need to get to the bottom of it. This is one of a number of issues with China right now. Just recently you see news about defense talks in Asia, and our defense secretary being snubbed. Financial Times reporting a snub of his meeting with a Chinese counterpart in that area. As China increases its influence in Asia, we're only going to see more of a likelihood that it's going to export its domestic political model of one-party rule, repression, non-existent human rights and religious freedom throughout that area. And frankly, as it gains its influence worldwide, we're going to see the likelihood that those ideas and models are exported around the globe. This is unfortunate because the United States needs to take the lead in combating and countering China's approach on human rights and religious freedom across the board in a number of areas with its persecution of religious minorities. We really think that China needs to be addressed by the Biden administration on this front.
All right, Travis Weber, Vice President for Policy and Government Affairs and Director of the Center for Religious Liberty at the Family Research Council. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend and happy Memorial Day.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
Coming up, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran. Terror on all sides. Who poses the biggest threat to start the next big war with Israel? That story next on Faith Nation.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel. Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com to get your copy today.
For 11 days, Hamas and other terrorist groups fired thousands of rockets into Israel. But Israel faces another enemy with far more powerful weapons. That enemy, Hezbollah.
The terror group could strike Israel with missiles in a war much more devastating than the recent violence we saw with Hamas. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell explains why Hezbollah is such a deadly threat.
I have to admit that as an Israeli, this is not the only front that
I'm concerned of. I look north and I see Lebanon and I see Hezbollah.
Counterterrorism expert Boaz Ganor tells CBN News Hezbollah and its estimated 150 to 200,000 missiles represents a far greater threat than Hamas.
If you ask me what concerns me with Hezbollah, everything that concerned me with Hamas, but big time, much more than what we had.
After studying the recent war, Ganot believes Hezbollah would try to overwhelm Israel's #1 defense, the Iron Dome. Ganor also points out Hezbollah possesses not just rockets, but missiles.
What's the difference between a missile and a rocket? A missile is a guided rocket. You can guide it, you can direct it to the targets. So they have guided missiles with much, much bigger warheads, and they cover all the territory of Israel. They can launch rockets from Lebanon and hit Eilat, which is the most southern part of Israel.
CBN News has reported on Hezbollah's facilities inside Beirut that convert its rockets into guided missiles. It's all part of a multi-billion-dollar Iranian project.
Iran have built this enormous capability for one purpose, and in my view, one purpose only: to deter Israel from attacking the nuclear facilities that they build in Iran.
Ganor, like most Israelis, takes Iran at its word regarding the desire to eradicate Israel.
They are saying that loud and clear. Once they can meet their ideological goals with practical capabilities like a nuclear bomb, that's an existential threat to Israel. You should bear in mind how small Israel cannot observe one nuclear bomb and recover out of it.
Ganor says Hezbollah represents an unprecedented challenge to Israel and that any war against it would dwarf the recent conflict with Hamas.
I believe that Hezbollah would cause much more damage and much more casualties in the numbers of hundreds, if not thousands. In that case, no doubt in my mind that the Israeli government and the Israeli military and the Israeli public would expect the Israeli government to do whatever they can in order to prevent those atrocities against Israel in a much lesser restrictive manner than Israel done in Gaza.
While the U.S. seeks to re-enter the Iranian nuclear deal, the chief of the UN nuclear watchdog says Iran is now enriching uranium at levels only reached by countries seeking atomic weapons. As that clock speeds up, it could be just a matter of time until Israel sees this northern border threat come to fruition. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Wednesday at 3 on the CBN News Channel. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
Well, as you all know, Monday is Memorial Day, a time to pause and honor the men and women who died serving our country.
At the Museum of the Bible here in Washington, they are observing the somber day in their own special way. I was there this week. Take a look. There is a lot to see here at the Museum of the Bible, and in line with Memorial Day, there are several Bibles that accompanied soldiers into war. They tell powerful stories.
This is our Bible in America gallery, where we talk about the impact of the Bible from the Pilgrims all the way down to the present day.
Meet Dr. Jeffrey Clohot, the museum's chief curatorial officer.
We have several objects that relate to really both sides in the Civil War and how the Bible was a source of comfort and encouragement to soldiers on both sides on a personal level.
In this particular case, items belonging to George Room, who served on one of the first African-American regiments.
He's posed in his military uniform. Yeah. Wow. So pretty cool that we have all from one individual like that.
It's neat to put a face to some of these artifacts.
Yeah, I mean, there's the guy in 1864 who's using this Bible, right?
There's also a very famous piece of Americana.
The Battle Hymn of the Republic was, a Civil War song. It was written by Julia Ward Howe.
Is that her right there?
That's her there, yep. And she wrote this actually just about a mile away from here at the Willard Hotel.
A song she wrote to bolster the troops.
And partly, she says, to replace the less than pious songs that they were singing, right?
Behind the scenes, Jeff takes us beneath the museum where they keep even more wartime Bibles. This letter written by President Woodrow Wilson in 1917, encouraging soldiers to read the Bible.
This proclamation would be printed inside these little pocket Bibles, which would be distributed to soldiers.
And then there's this one.
Yeah, a little bit of character. Now, this is a Civil War era Bible, and it's actually in German.
What's unique about it?
See that stain there? That's almost certainly blood that ended up on the Bible and left this stain, from the Civil War.
Wow.
So again, shows the cost of war and the price people paid to maintain our freedom.
One Bible is particularly special to Jeff.
Yeah, this one I threw in here. Now, this is not actually in the museum collection. It was owned by my grandfather, John Flack, who served in the Second World War.
Jeff's grandfather fought in the Battle of the Bulge.
This was given to him by his pastor. It's a leather cover, and you can tell it's quite worn. He must have carried it all over in his battle gear.
Back upstairs, more one-of-a-kind Bibles, including those donated by past presidents. President Donald Trump, and the museum's newest addition, a Bible from President Jimmy Carter, received just a few weeks ago.
Inside the front cover is the name and phone number of the Sunday school teacher from First Baptist Church here in D.C., and we know from presidential archives that he attended that church 60 times during his presidency.
And that Bible was given to Jimmy Carter by his brother, so a lot of history there. If you can't make it to Washington, D.C., several of these Bibles are actually featured on the museum's website. You just go to their website and click on the Collections tab, and I think we have something on our website, too.
Jenna, great story. Jenna Browder in the bowels of the Museum of the Bible, places I've never seen before.
It's an incredible place. I love going there.
Well, thanks for watching Faith Nation.
Have a great weekend.